16, if you'd please join us for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Klint. Here. Councilmember Manning.
Here.
Councilmember Demmer.
Here.
Councilmember Geisler. Here. Councilmember Johnson.
Here.
Councilmember Wells.
Here.
Mayor Cook.
Here. Thank you. First item on our agenda this evening is to adopt the agenda.
Your Honor,
Councilmember Manning.
I will move adoption of the agenda and with eliminating item 14.
Second.
Motion by Manning, second by Demmer to adopt the agenda as printed, striking item 14. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the agenda is adopted. We don't have any proclamations or presentations this evening, and we are on to approval of the special meeting from August 12th.
Your Honor,
Councilman Manning.
I move approval of the August 12th special meeting.
Second.
Motion by Manning, second by Johnson. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And that motion carries.
Abstain.
Oh, that motion carries 2 abstentions. Council members Klint and Demmer. Next one is the meeting minutes of August 16th.
So moved, Your Honor.
Second.
Motion by Wells, second by Geisler. Any discussion, correction? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And those minutes are approved. We have about 6 items on our consent agenda this evening. The first one is to receive the mid-year gambling expenditure report. And staff has received and reviewed the semi-annual reports for January 1st through June 30th, showing the gambling expenditures within the city of Coon Rapids and trade area for the 6 organizations at 15 locations. And the combined net profit this period was reported at $390,815.13, with expenditures within the trade area, which includes City of Coon Rapids, reported at $358,489.45. The reported combined expenditures specifically within the City of Coon Rapids was $329,517.45. All organizations achieved the 60% expenditure requirement within the trade area for this period. So we will receive the gambling expenditure report for the first half of 2016. And next item on our agenda is to approve the service agreement with Alexandra House. Alexandra House is a nonprofit corporation that is Anoka County's only women's shelter. It provides a 24-hour shelter, support services, advocacy, educational opportunities to women and their children in the city and Anoka County. Alexandra House also works with the police department and the city attorney's office with domestic violence cases. Alexandra House has made a request for financial assistance for the services it provides to the city, and the council did appropriate $10,000 to the Alexandra House in the 2016 budget for these services. This service agreement reduces the parties' This service agreement reduces the parties' wishes to writing. This agreement is for 1 year and can be terminated by either party within 30 days' notice. So the next item on our agenda. Let's go. There we go. To accept the Source Water Protection Implementation Grant and approve the agreement with the state of Minnesota. And the short thing here is we applied and received a grant for $6,115. So we will be adopting resolution number 16-96, accepting a $6,115 grant from the state of Minnesota, acting through its Commissioner of the Department of Health. It is further recommended that the council approve the execution of the attached grant agreement between the city of Coon Rapids and the state of Minnesota. And this is for the wellhead protection accept source water protection implementation grant and approve agreement with the state of Minnesota. I was trying to skip reading some of those paragraphs and it didn't help. The next item on our consent agenda is to approve the letter of engineering services for Wellhead Protection Plan Amendment Part 2. Wellhead protection is a way to prevent drinking water from becoming polluted by managing potential sources of contamination in the areas which supply water to a public well. The City of Coon Rapids is continuously looking to maintain safe drinking water by implementing wellhead protection standards that keep the city's groundwater and wells from becoming polluted. BARR Engineering completed Part 1 of the city's wellhead protection plan amendment in March, and Part 2 will focus on specific strategies for managing and protecting the critical areas identified in Part 1. So we will be approving the execution of the letter of engagement with BARR Engineering for engineering services related to Part 2 of the city's wellhead protection plan. And approve the 2016-2017 contract for school liaison officer services at the River Trail Learning Center, for us that have been around for a while, formerly known as L.O. Jacob. The police department maintains a separate contract with the Anoka-Hennepin School District Number 11 for school liaison officer services provided at the school, and the police department has operated the school liaison program at the school since 2010. So we will be entering into an agreement with them to provide that liaison officer for a 2% increase over last year for a total of $75,088.32. And then it's the same thing, 2016-2017 contract for school liaison officers and prevention program services this agreement provides funding for assigning police officers as school liaison officers at Coon Rapids High School, Coon Rapids Middle School, Northdale Middle School, and Anoka-Hennepin Regional High School, formerly known as Crossroads Alternative, and for officers teaching the Drug Abuse Resistance Education, the DARE program in the elementary schools. The police department has operated the school liaison program since 1974, and since 1989, the police department has instructed the nationally recognized DARE program in all elementary schools in Coon Rapids. So we'll be approving the school liaison prevention program officer services, and this also reflects a 2% increase over last year for a total of $189,756.86. And one more. The last consent agenda item is to approve a temporary on-sale strong beer and wine liquor license for the Fall Festival at Epiphany Church. And that will be used at the Fall Festival event on October 15th, 2016. Councilmember Manning.
I move adoption of the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by Manning, second by Demmer to adopt the consent agenda. Any discussion?
Your Honor, I do have a question.
Councilman Johnson?
Mr. Brody, on the Alexandra House agreement, I remember when we did this last year, there was some discussion about creating a clause in there for prorating the amount if there is a termination. We have a 30-day termination period. We fund it to the tune of $10,000. I wholly support that because I think we, as a city, benefit far in excess of $10,000 from the services that are provided. But I didn't see a prorated part in the event of termination, and I did see it, frankly, in the district's contract for a school liaison officer. So I'm wondering if, without upsetting the consent agenda, that is something that might be added.
Mr. Brody.
They've signed it, Your Honor, Councilmember Johnson. I do apologize. I think you did mention that last year. We did not include it this year.
Yeah.
In some ways, we're into September here, so we've kind of already sort of prorated, or at least assured us that we're going to get services at least through, even if we canceled it tomorrow.
Sure.
Through the end of the year. And so I certainly would put it on the to-do list and maybe even go back and update the agreement. I think we've already budgeted for next year's amount. So we either could
If we could include it in future years,
Yeah,
I
I'll make
like
sure I
it,
go
but
back.
I'm fully supportive of it. I
Sure.
think the city benefits significantly from it, far in excess of the
And I can make sure that
$10,000.
gets in for next year. I
Very
appreciate
good.
that.
Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And that motion carries. Next item on our agenda is to open the public hearing and suspend the public hearing until September 20th for establishing a housing improvement fee, Creek Meadows 2 Owners Association. So, Mr. Brody, does this mean that we're going to open it and take comments tonight, but then we're not going to close it and we're going to take comments again on the September 20th?
That would be staff's recommendation. As you can see from the memo, we did notify the affected property owners, and I'm guessing that there are some here tonight, so it would make sense that they wouldn't have to come back in a couple of weeks.
Yep.
We could take whatever testimony they would want to present tonight. We would do that. Notice will then be in the paper properly for that next public hearing or the continued public hearing, and so we'll finish it up on the 20th and proceed with the recommendation that we then adopt the resolution.
Okay. That was my understanding. I just wanted to double check before I opened it. And all right, so we're looking at helping facilitate. The housing improvement area was adopted by council on June 7th. Under state law, the owners of the residential units then had 45 days in which to file objections to that ordinance. If objections had been received from owners of 45% or more of the residential units, the ordinance would be void. After the 45-day period has passed, with the city receiving no objections, the Creek Meadows 2 Homeowners Association obtained quotes from various contractors. The contractors have now been selected, so the final cost is available and the city can proceed with the next step of the process, the imposition of the fee. The cost of the improvements amounts to $1,007,554. This includes replacement of the siding, gutters, windows, doors, concrete aprons, sidewalks, landscaping, remove and replace curb and gutters, and prep all driveways for paving of the seven of the buildings. With the city's standard assessment fee, the total cost is $1,031,735.30. In accordance with the ordinance establishing the area, the costs are proposed to be spread equally among the 44 residential units in the Creek Meadows 2 Owners Association Housing Improvement Area, and the fees are to be spread over a period of 15 years. The proposed interest rate of 2.92% is consistent with the current rate for special assessments, and the amount of the fee to be levied against each of the units is proposed to be $23,448.53. Is there anything else I should cover before I open the public hearing, or do you think that was already too much or enough?
Good summary.
Your Honor, I just have one question.
Yes, Councilmember
On
Manning.
the sentence that the city should not take the risk of committing to the project, there is no risk for the city, from what I understand. It's kind of confusing language.
There isn't, I mean, any costs from this project will be assessed against the property owners. I don't know if Sharon could, if there's any sort of what the process might be of what we do, at least basically assess it like we would any other special assessment.
I'm sorry.
Councilmember Manning, did you say costs or did you say risk? I'm
It
sorry.
says, for this reason, city should not take the risk of committing to the project.
I apologize, yeah, so we want to wait the 45 days to make sure there's no objections. I mean, so we shouldn't spend any more, I guess there's not much cost that we do, but we won't take any further steps. We're not going to prepare any assessment rolls, anything like
Basically,
that.
there's no risk financially for us.
No, and then we're going to wait to see whether there's any objections, and that we'll proceed based on that.
Okay.
Okay. With no objection, I will go ahead and open the public hearing for the considering adopting Resolution 16-91, establishing a housing improvement fee, Creek Meadows 2 Owners Association. I'll open the public hearing if anybody is here to address council for the public hearing from Creek Meadows. Anybody want to address council for the public hearing on this? Yes, sir. If you would please come up to the microphone and give us your name and address.
My name is Steve Sharp, 11250 Robinson Drive. I live on the back side of the development facing the soccer fields. Last year, my wife and I are going through some pre-retirement strategies, and we bought my mom's townhome from her, but we weren't able to get standard financing for it. We had to come up with a special loan because we couldn't get conventional financing on a 30-year or 15 or whatever because the shape of the development, and this was part of the process that we were going in. We knew going in that this was part of the process. And because as I understand it, because the reserve fund was not funded at a certain level and that sort of thing, I guess the point of my question is, at what point, once you give your okay and we've already set in motion the reserve fund strategies going forward, would I be able to go to somebody and try to remortgage again to be able to include these taxes that you're going to put on into a loan so that they're not just outright or paid by the year? Does anybody have that information?
That's almost like a mortgage company question. Any answers here?
At what point are you satisfied that you've done everything here and then I can go to, say, a mortgage company and say,
So when will we be locked in so that, that will be after the 20th,
after the 45 days?
After the 45 days, Sharon could go through the actual assessment process. It would still be for your next year, correct?
Correct. So after we adopted, which I'm assuming would happen on the 20th, we'd wait for 45 days, and then it would become a valid assessment, and then it would be certified to the county. So it's basically a valid assessment after 45 days from September 20th.
Mr. Mayor, though.
So October then?
They won't have the numbers until essentially the next year, though.
On the next year's taxes, they will get 1/15 of the assessment, which is probably $1,000 or so.
$1,900.
Okay, so $1,900. We did an amortization on that. So starting next year in 2017, you'd see the first installment.
Right.
So each year you'd have that $1,900. If you're going to try to refinance and pay off the whole $23,000 earlier, then you would have to deal with the mortgage company to try to do that.
But I guess what my question is once September 20th comes, then you've done everything, even though it's 45 days and that sort of thing, you've done everything you're going to do.
Well, in 45 days, we'll be certifying the levy, they're certifying the assessments for payable starting next year, correct?
Correct. So we're just going to wait for that 45 days to make sure that you don't have any more appeals.
Sure.
Because since it's the city's money that we're upfronting, we don't want to take any risks
No, I
with that. So we wait for that 45 days to make
So
sure.
after the 45 days, sometime in October, 1st of November, something like that, then that would be
Yes,
done,
it'll be-
and I could go to a mortgage company and they would say, you know, it looks like everything's in place, you can move ahead. And remortgage, put the taxes in with the loan and all that sort of
There's
thing.
no way we can assure what a mortgage company would say, but that sounds good.
And if I may, Mr. Mayor, after that 45 days, at the city, you'll have 30 days interest-free. So if you get that refinancing done in that 30 days, you don't have to pay the interest that comes with that after it gets certified to your taxes.
So it would be beneficial to
Probably
me
the
to try
first
to,
week in November would be a great time for you.
we want to start looking into it.
Yes.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Anybody else to address? Yes, sir. Please give us your name and address, sir.
Hello, my name is Robert French. I'm 1537 Creek Meadow Drive, Creek Meadows 2. I'm just curious about when all this stuff is happening. When is going to be repairs started, finished? Is it going to be finished before winter, during winter? Or is it going to have to wait till after the 45 days before it can even start?
I would imagine that's subject to the contracts between the association and the contractors. Would we have any answers on that? Is there a time window when it has to be done within?
There is not a time window, but generally what we tell these associations when they're doing this, if you don't spend your money within a year, we're not going to refund, because you're going to be assessed for the whole amount. So whether you spend it or not is up to the association. But we cannot go back and refigure it.
Okay,
But
so-
once you hire your contracts and get the ball rolling, then we will basically be paying the contractors for the association. But you need to spend the whole amount.
Well, I'm just a homeowner right now. I basically need to talk to my board and management company then, right?
Yep.
Okay, right.
Okay, to get the schedule and get what actually all is going to be fixed. Okay.
Yes.
I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. French. Yes, sir.
My name is James Elmroth. I live at 1523 Creek Meadow Drive. A resident there for 4 years. Couple of questions. One is who administers the actual payout to the contractors?
Ms. Legg, did you say that the city does
The
that?
city does,
The
correct.
city will write the checks to the contractors.
Correct. The association will get the bills, they will approve the bills, they'll send them to the city, and the city will pay the bills. But we rely on the association's approval.
Okay, so my other question was, who approves that, that bill? So the association has to approve the bill, whether it's above or below the original estimates or costs.
Correct.
Okay. I guess it's a third question. I'm a little unclear as to why we accepted only one bid for the whole contract, one developer. Usually in contracts of any size, even the fact that I got my car fixed this week, I went for another three bids before I got why wasn't this considered? And did the council ask that question of the association?
Is there any stipulation that they have to have a certain number of bids? It's up to the association, isn't it?
Mayor and council, it is up to the association, but I'm not sure, the legal department actually started this process. I don't know if we received other bids. It's been going on for quite a while now, so.
I'm not sure either.
I thought that there were, but I can't say that 100%.
Good question for his association or his management company. Is that what I'm hearing?
I will look into it too from our end, and obviously since we're continuing the public hearing, we'll be able to provide an answer.
Okay.
But
Does that work?
a little clarification, I didn't quite
So,
hear that.
the public hearing is going to stay open until September 20th. So our legal department is going to look in to see if they've got a record for other bids, and we'll know at the next meeting.
I appreciate that, thank you.
Hi.
I'm Sandy, 1541 Creek Meadows. I'm the president of the association, so I can answer Jim's question.
Oh, perfect.
We had actually 4 contractors. As an association or the board, we decided on 1 out of those 4. So this has been going on for quite some time. Just so Jim, you're aware, we've had quite a few proposals and quotes from different contractors. But MEI is who we chose, and I think they're a good choice. But one question I did have is, I talked with Kim Reed because she explained that they accidentally forgot to put in the public hearing to the newspaper. So that's kind of choking us a little on time. But she did say that when they do send out, after the 20th, they do send out that final letter again, there's a waiver attached that we as the association members can waive that final 45 days. And then we could basically start right away.
Oh, that's accurate.
That's correct.
Yeah. It says that the state law provides that a resolution imposing the fee may be vetoed if less than 45, but basically if the owners of at least 55% have committed in writing not to object, then you get to go. Because if 55% say yes, then you can't have 45% say no.
Right, right. So we need probably about 24 people, I suppose, to, so if we get 24 people from our association to waive that time, we're in, so hopefully. Okay, that's all I wanted to say. Thanks. And thank you for the opportunity again.
Thank you. Anybody else to address council for the public hearing? Yes, sir.
Jim Hoffus with Sarah Kinney, 11274 Robinson Drive. I'll attempt to be brief. This is a mixed bag at best. I've been a part of these assessments before. I currently am in one at our other property. As a director of business development and one who loves numbers, these numbers don't work. They're not going to work for the homeowners, particularly in this area. This particular development is comprised largely of people who are not on the upper tier of the socioeconomic ladder. Our other home that we have is, and the result has been, despite my serving on that board as well, to vote against it, we are now seeing the result of more renters, more sellers, mismanagement, and the list goes on. And that was with a modest increase, and it was through mediation as well as a result of contractors and builders. I'm concerned that even here on this particular forum, the numbers don't add up. I'm more concerned by, as the gentleman said, that there was only one bid accepted. Everything about this, while it may benefit in the short run, over the cost of 15 years, when you see, depending on the numbers that we use, that I've calculated here, we're looking at anywhere between a 69 to an 86% increase. If you couple that with the already $189 assessment that we're paying, which also begs the question, if we've been paying $189, use that by way of example only as a fixed cost, why are we suddenly being assessed for $23,000? What happened to the $189? I know what the current board that I am part of will say. Well, your insurance and your lawn and your maintenance and everything else counts for that. It does not. 69 to an 86% increase per month, $24,000 per unit. Static figures when you just talk about them that way, but when you look at them in real world principles of $189 plus on an average anywhere between $130 to $163 additional a month, in 15 years, those two amounts will come to about $64,000. Right now, if you look at any CMA, comparative market analysis of this property, without the improvement, of course, you're looking at a high end of $113,000 for a home. On average, they've been going anywhere between $90,000 to $101,000. So over the course of 15 years, you're going to pay 3/4 of your home's value. Most cannot do that. I'm concerned that we've only made this by one vote, is my understanding. There's a lot that doesn't make sense. I'm not saying that the improvement wouldn't be just that, an improvement, but a lot of times when we're faced with the opportunity to fix something, if not done correctly, as we all very well know here, it is incredibly costly. Now, I don't live in Coon Rapids full time. Our daughter does, as does my fiance here. But the problem that I do have is I make a very good living doing this stuff. I look and I go, what's going to happen? What's going to be the end of this? And I know that right across the street we have some apartments that aren't always favorably predisposed to what we're trying to do here. I don't know a delicate way to put it other than they also are very low on the socioeconomic stratum of renters. And my big fear is that if this goes south, and it's already happening on my own street, realtors are selling, Twin Cities Rental is moving in, they're buying units as a block, 10 units per block, and now everybody's a renter, and renters do not have the same care to their property or vested interest as does a homeowner. My own board has taken to calling us tenants and renters. I joined the board for this very reason, and it's been an uphill fight, and now I'm looking at one that is even more. So I know for one that we will sell, and I would encourage anybody else were this to pass, to do the same, because over the course of 15 years, you got to think about it. Why hasn't this been done sooner? I understand that associations, everybody wants to get as much money out of them as possible when you're the homeowner. Oh, gee, my pergola broke. I think the association should pay for that. It doesn't work that way. I understand the ins and outs of association and the finances. But the problem is, why hasn't this been done piecemeal, been done sooner? Where were the funds for that? There's a lot of questions that should be asked and answered before this is passed, and you expect to saddle people, because unlike the other gentleman who was here, unlike my fiance and I, if need be, we can refinance, we can do things. Most people aren't in our position. They're the ones who don't answer. They're the ones who don't show up. And I certainly wouldn't, if I understood what was said earlier, I certainly wouldn't do away with that clause of the 45% or more of the residential units subject to the fee file. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think it's important to remember that all we're acting as is facilitators here. We're not, it's up to the homeowners and, you know, whether they want it or not. And so that's a compelling case for your association. But is anybody else here for the public hearing? All right, then I will not close the public hearing. It will be suspended and until September 20th. So what?
It probably would be appropriate to by motion to continue that hearing.
Oh, all right, okay.
So, Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to continue the public hearing for the consideration of adopting Resolution 16-91 for the Creek Meadow 2 Owners Association housing improvement fee till September 20th.
Second.
Motion by Geisler, second by Johnson. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And that motion carries. All right. We don't have any bid openings or contracts. Under old business, we have consider adoption of ordinance 2175 restricting parking on Crooked Lake Boulevard Service Road. This is from 119th Avenue to 121st Avenue. This proposal came about due to resident concerns regarding on-street parking in the area, presumably overflow from Morris Bay Elementary. The Traffic Review Committee reviewed the area on July 12th, 2016, and on July 26th, city staff sent a letter to residents along the Crooked Lake Boulevard Service Road requesting feedback regarding the placement of no parking signs along the west side of the service road between 119th and 121st. Signs would be considered only during business hours, Monday through Friday, throughout the regularly scheduled school year per Anoka-Hennepin School District. Staff received a number of varied responses from the residents. The majority of the residents were against parking on the west or the home side of the road, but suggested several alternatives, including no parking on the east side. Several residents were in favor of no parking on both sides. After considering all comments and observations, the revised recommendation is to post permanent 24-hour year-round no parking signs on the east or northbound side of Crooked Lake Boulevard Service Road from 119th Avenue to 121st Avenue. This would alleviate concerns regarding events held outside regular school hours and further prohibit parking across from driveway entrances. A follow-up letter stating such was sent to residents in the area on August 8th. An ordinance was introduced by council on August 16th, and council is now requested to adopt the ordinance, and we didn't hear anything more since the 16th?
Nope.
All right, so we're looking at adopting that ordinance restricting parking on the east side of Crooked Lake Boulevard Service Road from 119th to 121st Avenue.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Johnson.
I'll make the motion to adopt ordinance 2175.
Second.
Motion by Johnson, second by Wells. Councilmember Clint.
If we approve this for no parking on the east side, they will be able to park then across from the driveways.
Councilmember Clint, members of council, they would actually be parking on the same side as the driveways.
Right.
We're restricting it across the street from the driveways, because that was the concern, people backing
Back
out of their driveways into cars parked on the opposite side. So they can park between the driveways, but they cannot park across the street from the driveways. All the homes are on the west side of the road.
It doesn't make sense to me. I'm sorry, but if you can park on the east side,
We're
you could
restricting
be,
parking on the east side.
but no parking on the west.
No parking on the east
Okay.
side, parking on the west is okay.
You could still park in front of somebody's driveway.
No, you can park between their driveways. There are no homes on the east side of the road.
I know that.
So you would be parking across the street from their driveways
the-
if you parked on the east side.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So you could back in from your driveway out and hit a car that's parked on the east side.
Not if we
This
pass
is
this
restricting
ordinance.
parking on the east side. This is saying no parking on the east side of the road. That's what's being proposed.
Staff recommends the city council adopt the ordinance restricting parking on the east side of the Crooked Lake Boulevard Service Road from 119th Avenue to 121st Avenue.
So no parking on that east side at all.
Correct.
Right.
Okay. Now my second question, and I brought this up with the city manager, because school's already started and they've already been parking out there, can we put some temporary signs if this passes, until we get the permanent signs?
There are,
It's just because there's already so many functions going on up there, people are getting used to parking there, and I would think that maybe temporary signs would teach them right at the beginning of the year what's going on.
that was kind of the reason why we wanted to get it on sooner. And once this is adopted, we have to publish and have to wait, if I'm not mistaken, Joan, 30 days?
15.
15 days before it actually becomes enforceable. So it's not going to occur until probably the end of September when we're actually putting those signs in. And that's what I talked to a few of the homeowners about. The only way we could do it now would be from an emergency standpoint, and that would, you know, be working with John.
Can't do temporary ones?
As
That would
I've been
be the
told by the
emergency.
city attorney several times, no parking is by ordinance only. Unless
That's
it's an
interesting,
emergency
because we just
situation.
had it last couple weeks in my neighborhood when they were redoing the streets.
Seal coating.
Right.
That's
No
for
parking
construction
signs.
and maintenance. You can't perform that work if people are parked there.
Okay.
Okay. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? And that motion carries. Next one is to consider adoption of ordinance 2176, restricting parking on 114th Avenue Northwest at Magnolia Street. Staff received several residents, this proposal came about from the streets supervisor regarding on-street parking in the area. The Traffic Review Committee reviewed the area on May 31st. On June 16th, city staff sent a letter to residents requesting feedback regarding the placement of no parking signs on both sides of the street from the northwest corner of the intersection of 114th Avenue and Magnolia to a distance of approximately 250 feet south and southwest and 150 feet east and southeast. Staff received several resident responses on the matter. A majority of residents indicated they are not in favor of permanently posting no parking signs, but did indicate they would be in favor of no parking only during daytime hours, not including Saturday and Sunday. After considering all comments and observations, staff's revised recommendation is to post no parking signs between the hours of 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. Monday to Friday at the intersection. A follow-up letter stating such was sent to residents in the area on July 21st. Staff received no objections or comments from area residents based on the follow-up letter. An ordinance was introduced by council on August 16th, and council is now requested to adopt the ordinance restricting parking on 114th Avenue and Magnolia Street.
Your Honor,
Councilmember
I
Manning.
move adoption of the ordinance.
Second.
Motion by Manning, second by Demmer. I'm not going to read it. We've read it a couple times now. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And that motion carries. One more old business on parking. And this is consider ordinance 2177, restricting parking on 105th Lane and Kumquat. And this is that little corner, here we go, 150 feet north and east from the corner of 105th Lane and Kumquat Street, and the residents were all okay with it all the way through, so.
Your Honor, move adoption of 2177.
Second.
Motion by Johnson, second by Geisler. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And that motion carries. Item 15 is to consider adopting the preliminary 2017 tax levy. A preliminary tax levy must be certified to the county by September 30th to compute parcel-specific notices. The proposed 2017 budget, the proposed city tax levy, is $25,613,000. This levy can be reduced before final certification in December, but cannot be increased. And this represents a slight increase from 2016. 2016 it was 24,873,760. 2015 it was 24,266,990. And this year we are looking at proposing the city tax levy $25,613,000. Do we need any more information? Councilmember Manning, you look like you're ready to jump on this.
Since everybody else is so anxious, I move adoption resolution 16-90.
Second.
Motion by Manning, second by Demmer.
Mayor and Council, I
Ms.
just
Lake?
want to point out that included in this, we have that $725,000 for the HRA levy, which we will adopt at the next meeting. But just so you're aware that we're potentially proposing that $725 for the HRA levy, which is the same amount as last year. So we will adopt that one, however, at the next meeting, just because we didn't notice for the HRA meeting, so.
All right.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And that motion carries. Item 16 is an introduction only, and it's to consider the introduction of an ordinance approving a zone change, Vanman Architects, 10110 Woodcrest Drive, Spirit of Grace Church. And this property has been zoned high-density residential since 1985, and they've been operating with a conditional use permit. And they're looking at changing the zoning, the same reasons that make this site appropriate for the office zoning district, make it difficult to develop as high-density residential. Well, that's actually what it's zoned for right now, right? Yeah. We're looking at approving a zone change of this property from high-density residential to office. And the applicant is also proposing a corresponding land use amendment to office. The same reasons that make this site appropriate for the office zoning district make it difficult to develop as high-density residential, the parcel shape, size, and the high-density residential development standards limits the development potential. Even though the site is bounded by a city park on one side, it is across the street from a general commercial use that includes a large lumber yard. The proximity to the commercial uses decreases its desirability as a high-density housing site. And does anybody have any questions on this?
I can make a quick comment.
Yeah, go ahead, Councilmember Demmer.
Yeah, I agree with the findings here. This would be a weird spot to put residential, and it just seems like sort of a vestige of an old plan where it maybe didn't get looked at as closely. It has a church on it now. They want to expand, and if the church ever went away, I think office is probably as good of a thing as any you're going to find for this spot. So I think this is a good plan.
Excellent. So then we will consider planning case 16-19 introduced based on the following findings. The proposed rezoning to office is consistent with the land use designation of office. The proposed rezoning is compatible with the adjacent land uses and zoning. The times and conditions have changed so that a reasonable use of the property cannot be made under the current zoning, and the proposed zone change would not have an adverse impact on the area, and we will consider that introduced. Item 17 is another introduction, planning case 16-21. Consider the introduction of an ordinance approving a zone change from local oil company of Anoka, and these are for properties 2437, 2423, and 2405 Coon Rapids Boulevard. I just realized, Mr. Harlicker, did you have something you wanted to go over on this, or this is the old Century 21 Borden sign and the old furniture store there, and they're requesting a change to zoning from office and high-density residential to general commercial. It seems pretty straightforward.
It is, Mayor, at the Planning Commission meeting held last month, there were no comments at the public hearing, and Planning Commission did recommend approval of the proposed zone change. It's really kind of an extension of the existing general commercial district along the north side of Coon Rapids Boulevard there.
Any questions from anybody here for staff? Okay. If not, then we'll consider planning case 16-21 introduced, approving the proposed zone change based on the following findings. The proposed rezoning to general commercial is consistent with the land use designation of general commercial. The proposed rezoning is compatible with the adjacent land uses and zoning. The times and conditions have changed so that a reasonable use of the property cannot be made under the current zoning. The proposed zone change would not have an adverse impact on the area, and the proposed rezoning is consistent with the Coon Rapids Boulevard Framework Plan and the River Rapids Overlay District, and we will consider that introduced. We're also looking at now an introduction to consider restricting parking on Dakota Street from Coon Rapids Boulevard south to 116th Lane. And Mr. Hammer, did you want to hit on this one a little bit? Or I could just read this wonderful paragraph you've probably drafted.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this is somewhat of a reaction to the first go-around of the nurses' strike out there. We had kind of tailgaters and other people. By parking on both sides, it really constricted that road, and that's the emergency access for ambulances to get in and out. There's also parking on the west side of Dakota Street with soon to be a crosswalk connection over to this site. So you're really reducing visibility in the ability for emergency vehicles to get down there. So kind of what we're proposing is to restrict parking to one side of the street, only on the east side. Mercy is also doing their expansion down there, and a right turn lane is going to be required as part of that project. So that further starts to condense that road. And it'll be similar to the next item on the agenda as well. So with that, I can certainly stand for questions.
Any questions on that? All right. Well, then we will consider. Do we have any numbers on this one? So we will introduce an ordinance restricting parking on both sides of Dakota Street from Coon Rapids Boulevard south to 116th Lane, and we will consider that introduced. Item 19. Mr. Mayor, you said that's kind of the same thing over on Eldorado Street. You're requesting the City Council introduce a no parking ordinance on both sides of Eldorado Street from Coon Rapids Boulevard south to a distance of approximately 100 feet.
Correct. That one is, there is no future right turn, so you're not going to lose some of that space there. It just gets really congested at that entrance off of the boulevard. So if there's a vehicle coming out and you can't clear that intersection if you're turning in, we're just trying to create some space to get people off of the boulevard in that location. There are some high-density users back there. That's primarily a residential area. They do need some of that on-street parking for their own maintenance needs and other items. So it's similar in the width, but in the location, we're looking at kind of an odd configuration, a hospital versus multifamily residential parking.
And we're really talking about extending the no parking by 70 feet, because since there's an intersection there, you're already 30 feet, right?
Correct.
So it's a total of 100 from Coon Rapids Boulevard.
Basically to the entrance into those apartment buildings. You know, just everything north of that would be restricted to no parking.
Okay. So I'm curious, because since we've been, we have the person that owns some property down there that frequently texts us pictures of an empty street to let us know there's still nobody parking here. And so now I drive by all the time and I'm always looking and I'm still never seeing cars there. Yeah. So I'm just kind of curious.
If I might, Mr. Mayor, I did have some follow-up questions. I thought when you were talking about Dakota Street, so the one earlier on the agenda than this one, I thought you said that there was going to be parking restricted on one side of the street. Did I hear that wrong?
No, you heard it right. I was mistaken. I apologize.
Okay, so it's going to be both sides of the street on Dakota?
Both sides on Dakota.
Okay.
Both sides of El Dorado, but for a shorter distance.
And as the mayor indicated, I mean, some of us have gotten some communications from a landowner that has some property there, and there have been some suggestions about could we on El Dorado, which is more residential, could we restrict it just on one side of the street, perhaps say, for the sake of discussion, the east side of the street that's away from the multifamily. It's basically the back side of Jerry Schwinn Cycle Shop. Could we restrict it there and accomplish the same, essentially the same concern that we have? And you know, recently we had the experience of the picketing at Mercy, and there was some concern about traffic overflow, so I drove up there to see what the parking arrangement was there, and our police department had restricted parking just on one side of the street, and that seemed to be quite effective in still permitting emergency vehicles to get in and out and things like that. So I'm wondering what thought was given to one side of the street versus both on that, and also if council, and this is kind of a question for Mr. Brody, if council were to decide to restrict parking on one side of the street only, slightly different than the proposed ordinance, would it require a reintroduction, or is it substantially similar enough since we're proposing now to take it from both sides of the street? And if we change the ordinance a little bit through discussion?
I think based on what Councilmember Johnson is saying, I don't think it would require a reintroduction. We're still in the same location. We're actually reducing the area of no parking rather than increasing it, so I think it would be sufficient if that was the direction that we went, that we wouldn't have to reintroduce it.
Okay. And I don't know what thought you all gave to one side of the street versus both on.
Councilmember Johnson, I'll say that I was contacted by two residents that live south on El Dorado who mentioned the apartments as some of the overflow parking concerns. They said, we've been trying to get parking restrictions on this road for years and nobody ever responds, nothing ever happens. It's kind of odd that the strike happens and now you run over there and you start restricting parking. I'm trying to get that to happen over here. And it was the first I had heard of it since I had been here. So to me, it was that residential discussion to the people to the south, and the fact that we're talking about maybe a parking stall, maybe two, if you restrict it from one side to the other. I think clearing that throat as you approach that intersection is always going to be the safest thing to do. I don't know what the chief had to add to that, but that's the thought process behind where I arrived. I did also contact that property owner last week, let him know what the plan was. I know Sarah in our department had also mentioned the same thing. I asked if he had any questions, concerns. I haven't heard from him. Maybe you have in the past week, but I had not.
Oh, yeah. Do you want to see the text? Chief Wise, did you have something to add to that?
No, actually, I thought Mr. Himmer did a good job explaining it. We're just talking about the 100 feet of El Dorado where it's on a curve, and that it's the on-street parking on that curve just restricts visibility and that tunnel effect that he's talking about if cars park there.
Do we have other examples of that in town where we routinely do that?
If you think back to last fall, Foley Boulevard impacts, when we started restricting some of those access points, we started to notice the same thing where people are parking closer and closer to those busy streets. So as people are turning off and on them, sometimes you can't get 2 cars to fit in there. So there's probably been a handful in the past year or so as you look at residential streets that come out onto more of a collector road.
I'm just curious. I literally drive there frequently, and I'm always looking, and I might see a car, and then I won't see anything, and it's different times of the day. And
it does seem to be a bigger issue when there's, you know, additional traffic in the area, and that seems to be heightened by things like the picketing during the nurses' strike. Although I will say, if that is a potential inevitability anyway, even going into the future, and if you restrict parking there, and the point this landowner made, and I thought it was a legitimate point, is that then pushes the parking further into the residential neighborhood. Whereas right now, there is some limited parking that's up by a multifamily unit and the back end of a commercial property, which seems to be potentially less of an impact. But a lot of this is just talking theoretical stuff.
There's also the bus stop that's there that collects parkers. There's the trail crossing that's been recently rehabbed, so you start to introduce pedestrians into that area. It just gets a little crowded, and for 2 parking spots, I didn't think it was worth it. That's my opinion.
So if I can just get a point of clarification, because the map that we have is just kind of a black and white parcel map. Are you suggesting restricting parking just to that first turn into the multifamily unit? There's
Correct.
2. There's a
The
first one and then a
access
second one.
point on the west side of the road, because not directly across the street, slightly offset to the north is the access to that property to the east, which that really takes up whatever available parking there would be if I did pick one side or the other.
Very well. Okay, I understand. Thank you.
all right, so we're going to introduce this as presented. We're introducing an ordinance restricting parking on both sides of El Dorado Street from Coon Rapids Boulevard south to a distance of approximately 100 feet. Next item on our agenda is to consider adopting Resolution 16-92, calling for a public hearing on a drainage and utility easement vacation for Lawrence Estates. In planning case 13-26, the council approved the final plat for Lawrence Estates on May 20th, 2014. This plat creates 6 lots along the south side of 128th Street and 4 lots on the north side. It has been determined that one of the lots on the plat has a utility and drainage easement running through the middle of it. The drainage and utility easement is not needed, and the city engineer recommended the easement be vacated. A vacation petition may be initiated by the city council upon adoption of a resolution by a 4/5 majority of the council. Resolution 16-92 initiates the vacation and calls for a public hearing for October 4th. Does that cover it?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor.
All right.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Geisler?
Move to adopt Resolution 16-92, calling for the public hearing on October 4th, 2016, for vacation of a drainage and utility easement off 128th Avenue.
Second.
Motion by Geisler, second by Demmer. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion carries. Next item on our agenda is to consider planning case 15-35. Consider resolution 16-97 granting final plat approval for Anoka Hennepin First Edition 11301 Dogwood Street. We are going to be referring back to this parcel in the next 4 items after this one. So let's just this one time, the first time, read what it is. In February 2016, the City Council approved the preliminary plat for Anoka Hennepin First Edition. The plat subdivided 79 acres into 6 lots and 3 outlots. The plat includes request for variances to the minimum lot depth requirement for 3 lots and lot frontage for 1 lot. Lot 1, Northdale Middle School, 38.9 acres, no variance is needed. Lot 2, Eisenhower Elementary School, 17.3 acres, no variance is needed. Lot 3, the City Well House, 15,334 square feet, variance for lot depth is required. Lot 4, the City Well House, 16,573 square feet, variances for lot frontage and lot depth are required. Lot 6, proposed maintenance facility, 5.3 acres, no variance is needed. Outlot A, future development is 10.7 acres. Outlot B is a stormwater pond of 5.8 acres, no variance is needed. And Outlot C is a remnant parcel and no variance is needed. Each of the well houses will be on its own lot, each school on its own lot, and the maintenance facility on its own lot. Each of the lots meet the minimum lot area requirement, and the buildings will comply with the setback requirements. Because of the location of some of the well houses and the desire to minimize the impact on the school district properties, some of those lots will need variances to lot depth. One well house is located behind a row of residences and will not have frontage on a city street. And the subdivision regulations permit the granting of variances, and the variance can be granted providing, well, I'm sure we've met at least some of these. Looks like all of them. So, is there anything that you want to present on this, Mr. Harlicker, or should we just go forward with these motions?
Mayor, I think you did an excellent job of
reading your writing?
Summarizing the proposed final plat. There is just one condition, and that is in being worked out on the next couple items. All engineering comments must be addressed.
Okay.
Just as a point that as we get to those next items, what we're doing is vacating some of the easements that aren't going to be on the plat. In a couple of weeks, or when this gets further along, we'll be bringing back easements. So we'll be restating those easements, providing for new easements and access agreements for various lots to both the school district and to some of our well houses. So just to kind of give you a bigger picture of what's to come, and then there'll eventually be an exchange of deeds where we'll take ownership of our pond and they'll take ownership of the land underneath their building that we've been working on, I think, for 25 years now.
So basically, right now, we're granting a final plat approval, and then our next 4 items will be vacating storm sewer, water main, sanitary sewer, water to well and access, yeah, all kinds of things. So we can take one of each one of those as we get to it.
Your Honor.
Councilmember Manning.
In planning case 15-35, I move approval of resolution 16-97, approving the final plat for Anoka Hennepin First Edition with the 6 stated conditions.
Second.
Motion by Manning, second by Clint. Discussion?
Mr. Mayor, it's really 1 condition and 6 stated variances.
Okay.
I guess there is one condition. That's the all engineering comments be met, and that we're approving the variances based on those 6 findings for those particular lots that needed variances.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve the variances to minimum lot depth and lot frontage based on the following. The intent of this chapter is met. The granting of the variances will not be detrimental to the public safety, health, or welfare, or injurious to other property or improvements in the neighborhood in which the property is located. The conditions upon which the request for a variance is based are unique to the property for which the variance is sought and are generally not applicable to other property. The literal interpretation of the provisions of this chapter would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the same zoning district. Number 5, the special conditions and circumstances do not result from the actions of the applicant. And number 6, because of the particular natural surroundings, shape, or topographical conditions of the specific property involved, unusual hardship to the owner would result as distinguished from a mere inconvenience if the strict letter of these regulations were carried out. Those?
Those. Yes.
Okay. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion carries. Next on our agenda, it's that same parcel. We're looking at setting a public hearing on a storm sewer, water main, and sanitary sewer easement vacation as part of the Anoka Hennepin First Edition plat. When are we scheduling this for the 20th?
So, Mr. Mayor?
October 4th.
I'll make a
Geisler?
motion to adopt Resolution 1693, calling for a public hearing on October 4th for vacation on storm sewer, water main, and sanitary sewer easement as part of the Anoka Hennepin First Edition plat.
Second.
Motion by Geisler, second by Wells. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion carries. Next one is extremely similar. Consider adopting Resolution 16-94, calling for a public hearing to vacate utility, water well, and access per document number 438056.
So moved, Your Honor.
Second.
Motion by Wells, second by Clint to adopt Resolution 16-94, which calls for a public hearing on October 4th, 2016 for vacation on utility, water well, and access easement as part of the Anoka Hennepin First Edition plat. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion carries. And now, consider adopting Resolution 16-95, calling for a public hearing to vacate water main through document number 904370.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to adopt Resolution 16-95, calling for a public hearing on October 4th, 2016 for vacation on water main easement as part of Anoka Hennepin First Edition plat.
Motion by Geisler, second by Demmer. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion carries. And one more time, consider adopting Resolution 16-98, calling for a public hearing to vacate storm sewer per document number 438054.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to adopt Resolution 16-98, calling for a public hearing on October 4th for vacation on storm sewer easement as part of Anoka Hennepin First Edition plat.
Second.
Motion by Geisler, second by Demmer. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion carries.
A lot of work for all that vacation.
Yeah.
I was trying to imagine how many hours they had into those documents. All right, we are at the open mic portion of the evening. Sir, are you here to address council for open mic? Anybody here for open mic this evening? I'm going to spare you reading the introduction then. And we did have somebody speak at open mic last meeting, and they did receive a written response. Other business?
Yeah.
Councilmember Clint.
I'm just wondering if we can get an update on what is the work that's being done on Foley Boulevard?
Councilmember Clint, members of the council, currently, starting today, after Labor Day, that's when the contractor for Anoka County is going to be moving into the site. Prior to this, it's been gas, phone, cable, electric, all of the relocates to move them back out of the way.
Okay. Thanks.
Other business? How are all of our contractors doing around town? They were mired in mud this morning down on Mississippi Boulevard.
Crunch time is in, Mr. Mayor. We're making good progress on some. Some are moving along a little slower than anticipated, but we'll get through it.
Was there a difference in how the bids went out? It seemed like some of them where there was water main replacement, the homes would be without water for a day and then a day and then a day. Whereas other areas, they would put the temporary water lines down and people would be just like an hour without water.
Yeah, in the areas where we had total replacement, that's where we set up temp services. sometimes just off of that street. However, you end up with a valve that needs to get replaced, and in order to isolate that area, you have to shut the 2 valves off. And that's when you end up with those outages. In areas where we didn't do total water main replacement, we were just going after the hydrants and the valves. And so those impacts were wherever you could isolate. So you might have to go a block down the road to shut off a valve and a block back the other way. And we try to limit that, and as part of construction, we also added several valves along the way to minimize those impacts in the future.
Because the residents along Crooked Lake, up across from Crooked Lake by the beach area, we're talking about it frequently being without water for extended periods of time. And I was just curious.
Yes, those were, you try to get 3 to 4 items done a day. So depending on how large, you might have 2 blocks shut off and you get 3 out of the 5 done. So then you have to come back the next day. And sometimes they don't always go so smoothly. The last few years we had some issues with that extending into 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock. And we were very adamant this year that, look, 4:30 is the time that it's back on. You got a little bit of wiggle room, but by 5 o'clock people should be back in. So sometimes it doesn't always, it's not conducive to getting things done quickly in that type of environment.
It was getting a little unruly up there in some of those homes.
Yes, I can imagine.
All right, so let's see, I just wanted to remind folks that the farmer's market is still going on Wednesdays from 3 to 6 at the Coon Rapids Ice Center. And the 21st of the month is Senior Day. Information will be tailored to senior citizens at the farmer's market that day. September 14th, the Coon Rapids Police Department will be having another car seat clinic from 4 to 7. And, 2 big things coming up. September 17th at 7:30 is the Movie in the Park at Riverview Park. And that's still where it's going to be hosted, Riverview Park?
As far as I understand,
that should be a wonderful location down there. And the movie will be Minions. Family activities begin 2 hours prior to the movie. Activities include bouncers, balloon art, and face painting. There are fees that apply for those activities. Concessions will be available for purchase, but the movie itself is free. Just bring a lawn chair, blanket, and enjoy the movie. And where's my, here it is. We've got one more council meeting before this, but September 25th is the Coon Rapids Love My Pet Fair, also at Riverview Park. Chief Wise, is there anything that you wanted to mention? You've had a couple, you met with Transformative Circle last week on the 1st, and then there's an event coming up on the 11th with the Transformative Circle. Isn't it the 11th?
That's a separate event than the one that's being hosted through Transformative Circle that I'm a part of here in the city. But I will say that we had a great session last week with this group, which is a diverse group of residents of our city who are interested in strengthening the relationship with their police department. And obviously, I'm very strongly in support of that. It's good that we're out in front and we're not waiting for a problem to happen. It's that we're building bridges. So Councilmember Johnson happened to be there for last event too, and I'm sure you would have positive things to say about it as well.
Yeah, it was a really nice turnout, and it was at the YMCA, and it was a good group of very interested people from the community.
Mr. Mayor, yeah, they do meet the first Thursday of every month. They took a month off in the summer, but so the first Thursday at the YMCA, if anybody wants to join.
And that was the meeting that hit on the 1st this month?
Yes.
Yes, that is correct.
All right. Any other new business?
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Johnson?
Wondering if Chief Piper has an update on what's going on September 11th and if the fire department's going to roll out as they do every year.
Council, September 11th will be Sunday, and that will be the 15th anniversary of the day that our country was attacked. The fire department, along with law enforcement and veterans and citizens, will be up because, as we say, we shall never forget. So from sunrise to sunset on the Main Street Bridge over Highway 10, we'll be up there like we have for many, many, many years, and to remember. So anybody that's interested, please stop by and say hello.
Yep.
It's such a powerful display with those fire trucks and the flags and all of the people lining the bridge with the flags, and
And the one change I will say this year is thanks to Councilmember Johnson, we have a bigger flag. So,
Oh, nice.
yes, we'll have 2 ladder trucks holding up a flag, and it's quite a bit bigger than the last one. And I think that was a great idea. and we'll
Did
see
you
how
get
it
one
works
from
out.
Perkins or what?
Same, I don't know if it's quite a Perkins flag, but it's a big flag.
Any other business to come before council? Mr. Stemwaddle, nothing to add tonight?
I was just looking for information, Mayor and Council, on the Transformative Circle event that's on September 11th. It's actually the religious forum. They're going to have religious leaders from different faiths come and sort of do a dialogue about what it means to be from that background, I guess, or that
Okay.
viewpoint.
And that's going to be here at City Hall.
Correct, yeah, at the Civic Center. Or so I was just looking for
Civic Center.
confirmation on that. I can send that out, and we'll get some messages out about that.
Everything's on the Coon Rapids website.
Yeah.
It's coonrapidsmin.gov.
Otherwise, for those folks who are interested in that, Transformative Circle does have a Facebook page. It's got all that stuff listed. I just couldn't find that particular event.
All right. Very good. No, there's no other business to consider. We'd look for a motion to adjourn.
To adjourn.
Motion by Johnson, second by Wells to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. We're done.
The Nazareth.